G'day homebrewers, thanks for tuning in. This is 15 Minutes in the Brewery. I'm Jeff, and today I'm going to be talking about Red IPA or Red Rye IPA. So let's get into it. So this is not the first time I've brewed a Red IPA. I think this is now the third time. I love the style. I really love the style. I first discovered Red IPA back in 2019, I don't know. I'm pretty new to craft beer. I haven't been into craft beer seriously for that long, so I'm pretty sure it was 2018. Actually, 2017 was the first time I had a red ale, and that was a Bridge Roads Celtic Red Ale. And then I had, after that, the first red IPA I ever tried was Red Nut by Bespoke Brewing in Canberra. And that's a beast of a beer, and the minute I put that beer in my mouth, I was in love. I was hooked, just like that. It was so good. And they had those cans back then where you pop the whole lid off the can, so it was like a little cup, and it was just so good. And the next red IPA I tried after that was a red IPA by Modus Brewing in Sydney called Former Tenant. And that IPA was just like, oh, so good. And I loved them both. And I just loved that big, malty, hoppy style beer. And the color, like, it's just fantastic. When you pour it out and you get this beautiful red color in your glass, and it just screams of malt and hops and mosaic and Citra and those kind of hops in your face. It's so good. So, like I said, I think this is my third. I'd have to go back and check. I'm not going to do that. But I do know I've brewed one before my own recipe, which turned out okay. And before that, I know I've brewed one that was a fresh wort kit, and that didn't turn out well. And that was primarily, I think, due to the yeast. I got a red IPA fresh wort kit, and I stuck Voss Kveik yeast because I wanted to ferment it really quickly. And it just turned into a muddy mess, and it was not nice. The mouthfeel was off, everything was wrong. And all I could put it down to was the yeast, because I used a fresh wort kit that was made by a professional brewery. They're highly rated, everyone loves them. And it was horrible. So I did make one for a while after that, kind of put me off a little bit. And it was middle of summer at that time, and I was more into the lagers and the summer beers, you know, and red IPA is probably a little bit too much. But we're just coming out of winter here in Sydney at the moment, so I've had this on keg now for 4 weeks. I'll tell you right now, I kegged this on the 18th of the 7th, so exactly a month ago. So this has been a keg for a month, this red IPA, and I'll give you a little look at it first. We'll turn the light on, we'll get a light going so you can kind of see, because I'm assuming from that angle it's pretty dark. It's got a little bit of haziness to it. I don't know how well that shows up. I honestly don't know. This is just an experiment. I'm trying not to flash the lens. But, oh, that's beautiful. When I shine it that way, you get that. When you're outside and you get this in the sun, the color is just spectacular. Really good. So, color's good. It has like a creamy off-white head. The head hasn't persisted in this particular glass because I actually poured this really safely. As you'll see, I'll show you the pour. I poured this extra safe so I wouldn't get too much head. I didn't want to get like a 2 centimeter thick head in the glass. So I poured it extra safe. So as a result, and being very cold, it just hasn't really headed up much from the pour. I could have headed it up more from the pour, but as you can see, it's actually got a nice layer on top that does stick around, and it sticks around all the way to the bottom of the glass, and you get really good lacing too. Oh, I love this beer. It's so good. It's fruity, but it's got that traditional kind of dank fruitiness, like that dank Simcoe mosaic kind of fruitiness. I didn't put any Citra in this beer, so it doesn't have that light and fruitiness of the Citra to bounce off it. It's more of a heavier, dank, fruity flavour, which I really like. So, and I think it really suits the kind of malt bill. And a classic hop combination for red IPA is Citra, Simcoe, Mosaic, you know. And you can you can swap them around, and I did. So I'm not going to waffle. I'm just going to talk about I'll talk about the recipe first, and then I'll talk about the brew day and the fermentation schedule and everything that went on. Now, before I go any further, this is actually a Red Rye IPA. I should probably clarify that. This is not a straight red IPA. This is a Red Rye IPA. And this is the first ever time I've brewed a Red Rye IPA. I've never put rye. Actually, I don't think I've ever put rye in a beer before. I've put triticale in beers before this, and triticale is, or flake triticale, which is a cross between wheat and triticum and rye, which is sea cow. So it's a cross between the two. And I've used the flake version of that in a hazy IPA, triticale, and that turned out really nice. But I don't think I really got any distinct rye character from it, and I'm not 100% sure what rye brings to the table, to be brutally honest. All right, so recipe. So for this particular beer, I used a combination of malts here. I used 28% Breeze Pale 2-row, because that's what I had at the time. And I only had 1.51 kilos left, which made up 28% of the grain bill. 28.6% was crisp malting Chevalier Heritage malt. Now I used that because I bought it, actually I think the last video I said I bought the Chevalier for another beer, but I actually bought it for the vintage ale that I made. I don't know. And I had leftover that I put into the Red Rye IPA. So I had 1.54 kilos or 28.6% of the Chevalier Heritage malt that went in this. 18.6% or 1 kilo of crisp rye malt. 9.3% or 500 grams of Gladfield Shepherd's Delight. 0.9% or 50 grams of crisp extra dark crystal. And 14.7% or 790 grams of triticale flakes, or flake triticale, flaked triticale, which is like flaked wheat, but triticale is a cross between wheat and rye. So you're getting the rye from the triticale, plus you're getting the rye from the actual rye malt itself. Okay, I went full American for the hop bill. So, and I hopped it all the way. Well, not all the way, but I hopped it at the start and the finish. So 60-minute boil, 60-minute addition, 31 IBUs, 31.5 IBUs of Chinook, 20 grams at 60 minutes, 12.6 IBUs of Simcoe, 50 grams at 10 minutes, so 50 grams of Simcoe, 2.4 IBUs or 25 grams of Crystal. I had some Crystal in the cupboard, and I actually like Crystal. Crystal reminds me of Cascade. It's got that great fruitiness of like Cascade. 7.6% of El Dorado or 25 grams at 10 minutes. So they were the three 10-minute hop additions. 25 El Dorado, 25 Crystal, and 50 of Simcoe. And then I dry hopped it with 30 grams of Mosaic, 85 grams of Simcoe, and 25 grams of El Dorado. And those amounts are simply just to get rid of them. To be brutally honest, that was just to get rid of those hops out of my freezer so I could use them up. So that's what the hop bill ended up looking like. Now, interestingly about this, because I used, well, it's not a huge amount of rye, but it's enough that I worried about the thickness that rye can bring to beers, because beers that are high in rye can be quite thick because of the beta glucans in rye, which are much higher than they are in barley malt or wheat. I'm pretty sure rye, the beta glucans in rye are like oats, or a bit like oats. They're very high. So I was worried about the thickness. Now I didn't want that thickness in the beer, so what I did is I actually started the mash at I actually started the mash at 40 degrees Celsius. So, did I write it in this book? I might just read it from this book if I wrote it in the book. All right, so I mashed 16 litres of treated water at 40 C. So 40 degrees Celsius is when I mashed in. I did a 20-minute beta glucan rest, and at 20 minutes, I started to heat the mash to 65 C for the main saccharification. Now, at that point, I didn't actually know. This is the first time I've ever done this. So at that point, I didn't realize the mash had become really thick. The water was extremely thick. And it actually, I actually noticed the sound first. I heard this really loud, blah, 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 and I thought, what's going on with the digiball? And I lifted the lid and it was going mental underneath. I could see that it was really thick. And I wasn't prepared for that. So I turned, and then as a result of that thickness, I went to turn it off. And I looked down and there was an error message on the digiboard. Actually, I sent it into error mode. And obviously the element had started to overheat because it couldn't disperse the heat through the thickness of the mash. And I had to turn the digiball off and on, and it came back on with the error message. So I turned it off and left it for about a minute, and then I turned it back on and it was fine. And what I did then is I put the 500 watt element on instead, just by itself. And I stirred it like crazy while I started to heat it up. And it seemed to get past that thickness and it started to thin out, and it was fine. I was able to turn the main element back on and heat it up much quicker. But as a result of that, I did get wart scorching the bottom of the digiball. I did get a little bit of scorching. And I don't think that's present in the beer. Like I can't smell it. I can't smell like burnt caramel. And I certainly can't taste it. I do not pick up the fact that that actually scorched the bottom a little bit. And that's something I've got to look out for next time. So once I got up to about 60, once I got to 64C, I mashed there for 40 minutes. And then what I did then is I actually drained, I did a batch sparge on this one for some reason that someone knows apart from me. I have no idea why I did this now. I don't know, I think I've got this thing about batch sparging. Well, I don't know, I just think the first runnings, you know, I got this thing about first runnings in my head and batch sparging. It's almost like a romantic kind of thing. And yeah, I don't know, it's just stupid really. But anyway, I batch sparged, so I drained the first runnings out, secured the bag so it wouldn't crush the false bottom, like clamped it down. And I drained that into a 20 litre bucket underneath. Then I poured the rest of the mash water in, and I heated that up to 75 degrees, stirred it. And once it got up to 76 degrees, I lifted the bag, strained it, squeezed it, and got the bag out of there. Then I got the first runnings in and tipped it in. So I mixed it all together. Now the first runnings came in at 1052 OG, and once I added the second runnings, the OG dropped to 1048, which is pretty good. I think 1048 was, where am I? Pre-boil was supposed to be 1050, so I was down 2 points at that stage, which is not too bad. I boiled for 60 minutes, and I did everything for the schedules as I told you before, the Chinook at 60 and those other additions at 10 minutes. Actually, I added the Whirlpool hops at 95C. I actually waited 5 minutes. I just gave it a stir at the end. I take the neoprene jacket off so it starts to cool a bit. And it was 95C before I added the Whirlpool hops. I cubed it. So I hot cubed the wort. And the very next day, it went into the Fermenter King Chubby. And I fermented it with USO 5, 18.4 degrees Celsius to start with. So I ran it at 18.4 Celsius for 3 days. At the fourth day, the fermentation is quite strong on the third day. At the fourth day, I could see it starting to slow. So I upped it to 19.2. At that stage, I was actually only running 4 PSI because I wanted to keep it low for dry hopping. Day 5, I dry hopped as per the recipe. And I upped the temperature to 21 degrees and I closed the spawning valve down. Day 6, I turned it up again to 22 because I thought I might as well just go straight to 22, just a little bit, I don't know why. But anyway, at that stage, day 6, 11 PSI, day 7, it got up to 17, and day 8, it was up to 20 PSI. Which is good. For 22 degrees Celsius, 20 PSI is, you want to get up higher. Like people say 15's enough, 15's enough. Not if you're at 22 degrees Celsius and you're trying to spund it for carbonation. The hotter you go, obviously the higher the pressure to force that CO2 into the solution. So the third day, at day 8, sorry, I took a gravity reading. It was 1015. It was a bit high. Day 9, day 10, where am I? Day 13. So I actually let the dry hop go a little bit longer than the 4 days. People say you get grassy notes. It probably is a little bit grassy. I wouldn't say vegetal. But I don't know. I don't tend to perceive grassiness, I think, as some people might. For me, it tastes fine. And I know plenty of people who have talked about dry hopping for several days and not having a problem. So, and other people say I dry hop for 4 days and it tasted grassy. So, day 13, the gravity was down to 1013. That's where it was going to go. It wasn't going to go any lower. 1013 was it. Even though I had USO 5, I honestly thought I was going to get down to 1008. So it's a surprise I only got down to 1013 in the end. It was supposed to be a plus 6% beer, and it ended up 1013, 5.6%. The SRM is 17.3. The IBUs is 55. It's got a beautiful colour. It keeps a nice little tight head on top, and it laces really nicely as it goes down the glass. It's a really lovely beer to drink. So the mouthfeel, I'm going to talk about the mouthfeel because I use rye, and people say that rye can give you a thick mouthfeel. The mouthfeel in this beer is, to me, probably ideal for this style. It's probably medium. Let me think. I think it's medium, maybe slightly a bit above medium. It's certainly not thin. The mouthfeel is certainly not thin at all. I would say medium. The bitterness is good. What did I say? 55 IBUs. And I think it's about right for this style of beer. There's a fair bit of hops in it, probably not as much as some people put in. But for me, because I don't drink a lot of hoppy beers, so that's the beauty of, if you drink a lot of lagers like I particularly do, and you're not drinking hoppy beers all the time, you don't get overloaded with the hops. You know, it's like Indian food. If you ate Indian food every day, you'd never taste anything else ever again. You think everything else is bland, right? So I don't drink a lot of hoppy beers all the time. So for me, I can hop a little bit less than some people do, and still get a perceptibly hoppy beer. For me, the bitterness I think is fine. Excuse me. Hop aroma is good. The hop aroma on this is really good. Like I said, it has that kind of dank fruitiness that you get from Simcoe and Mosaic. I can actually smell the Mosaic. Even though I only put 25 grams of Mosaic in, there was more El Dorado, there was more Simcoe, I can pick out the Mosaic. That is a really interesting hop Mosaic. But I can pick out the Simcoe. It's got that kind of dank fruitiness. The El Dorado, I think, gets lost in this one. I'm not sure if it was the El Dorado I bought, if the El Dorado the particular bag that I had wasn't that good, or was a bit old, or what, I don't know. But I mean, El Dorado, I think, is supposed to throw some tropical flavors, and I'm not getting anything like that in this beer. For me, it's probably, I think the aroma is more the Crystal, the Simcoe, and the Mosaic, and maybe I'll have to brew like a smash beer with El Dorado just to see what it's like, because I'm just not getting it. Anyway, so what would I change? What would I change going forward? Well, the beta-glucan rest, I would definitely do that again. I think it adds something to it. Now, I don't know that because I haven't brewed this recipe without the beta-glucan rest, and I haven't tasted the two to see side by side to see if there's a mouthfeel difference. People say there would be, even though like it's not a huge, like I keep saying, it's not a huge amount of rye in this beer. There is 18.6% of rye malt and 14.7% of triticale. Now, if triticale is half rye, half, like I keep saying, half rye, half wheat, that would put it at about 30% of the mash bill is rye or triticale, which is I would have thought that was a fair bit. And the rye malt itself is 18.6%. It's nearly 20%. I think that's the threshold for what you would call a rye beer. Oh, sorry, I bumped the microphone then. Don't do that. I think that's what you would call the threshold for a rye beer. I think around 20% of the bill. So I would do the beta-glucan rest again. I'll probably just keep doing that. I don't think I want to experiment and not do it and find the beer really thick and undrinkable. If someone's not done a beta-glucan rest and finds no perceivable difference in the body or the mouthfeel of a rye beer, let me know, because It was a bit of a pain. I scorched the water a little bit. Next time I have to be really careful when I'm heating out of 40C, that I've got the pump on full and I'm stirring as I heat out. I have to be much more careful. The hop bill, I changed the hop bill. I probably would put Citra back into it. I think this would benefit from Citra. I think Citra Mosaic would lift it. I'd probably go without Simcoe, just to see what it's like without Simcoe. I'd probably put something else instead of Simcoe. I'd probably substitute it for something else, maybe Citra Mosaic, Amarillo, maybe, I don't know. Because that Amarillo would give it like a fruitiness, like an orange, more of an orange fruitiness. That might go with a beer like this. Anyway, I'd probably try that combination, like just a different hop combination, I think. I would probably try something else as far as the red malt. So I'd put in this particular beer, there was Shepherd's Delight, and I've got a nice redness from it. But to me, it kind of tends to a little bit of orange red. I'll try Voyager Voodoo, and I'm going to try Gladfield's Redback Malt. I'll try those two and see what the difference is in the colour. But apart from that, I really enjoy this beer. I really like drinking this beer. It smells great. It tastes really good. Great mouthfeel. Bitterness, I think, for this style's pretty much spot on. Keeps a nice little thin head on it as it goes down. Creamy off-white. A couple of pints of this. I can easily drink about 3 pints of this. But being, what is it, 5.6%, it's supposed to be. It was actually supposed to have been 6.6. 6.5 it was. It's only 5.6. If it was 6.5, I probably wouldn't, but being only 5.6%, I can drink 3 pints of this easily. It doesn't get cloying. It's not cloyingly sweet. It's not overly bitter. Actually, my mouth right now is dry. I mean, that's probably partly talking, and it's also partly drinking this. You get that kind of dry mouth afterwards where you're like, oh, I need to go back and have another one. Oh, that's better. You get that, so you're going back, constantly going back. In saying that though, as the weather heats up, I'm probably not going to brew this beer again. I'll probably brew it I'll brew it once more before Christmas, and then I'll probably brew it again next autumn, winter. So there you go. I'm going to leave it there. That's my Red Rye IPA, beer number 71. If you've brewed Red Rye IPA or Red IPA, either or, and you've got any tips or suggestions or comments on the beer, let me know. I'm always willing to take other people's opinions on board. I read as much as I can. I get as much information online as I can before I brew beers. But otherwise, super happy. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you tune in again next time. See you then. Cheers.